What is up? Welcome to Market Psychology 101, where we look for value in the markets when there's fear and are cautious when there's greed. In today's video, we are going to be talking about Ethereum. Ethereum, the number one overall altcoin, the number two crypto out there, which has a market cap of around half a trillion and has a current price at around 4,200. Before we get into that, let's just take a look at some of our macro indicators. Fear and greed, we are falling into the neutrality territory. Been looking at this for a while, getting a series of higher lows, hitting a ceiling right at around where extreme greed and greed meet up. So could we see a bounce here? I think the more we tap the ceiling, the more likely it is that we either get a big move up or down. September seasonality is looming. We've been talking about this, how September tends to suck. Now, August overall, really not been so bad. And in the years like 2020 and 2017, where we are getting close to the cycle top, or at least within a year of it, the summers tend to not be bad. But even in those great years, September can still suck. So just keep that in the back of your mind if that almanac perspective or seasonality were to continue. Taking a look at Bitcoin year, altcoin year, because we are going to be talking about Ethereum. We're still relatively low. However, Ethereum has been doing well lately, and I will say I believe that we are in this phase two right now on the path to alt season. That Ethereum, as I'll show you in the charts, has been outperforming Bitcoin to some extent, or its valuation is going up against Bitcoin. And that maybe, we'll see some large caps such as Link, Cardano, Solana start to do well after Ethereum has its day. However long that takes, who knows? It can happen quick. Like 2017, it can happen a little slower, like in the 2020 to 2021 end of cycle. And then when Bitcoin tops, we get that rotation for alt season. So right now, I believe we're in phase two, but some recent price action on altcoins like Chainlink had me wondering, how close are we to phase three? We'll get into that into the charts. Now on this channel, before I get into all the charts, I talk about other crypto assets like Bitcoin mining stocks, other altcoins, top altcoins. And so subscribe to hear more about that. We'll get into live streams again shortly. One last quick thing, Bitcoin, I have on Heikinashi candles. We do have a sell signal. Heikinashi weekly candle is turning red. So again, we may see a little bit of a pullback. I think at worst, 102K to me is the line in the sand. I think that would hold up no matter what. But we have the 20-week moving averages at around 110, 108, somewhere in there. So I'm not too worried about Bitcoin now. We can get a little bit of a sell signal chop sideways, or, it can turn into something in the 50-week. By the time it moves up, again, I think if we had to move down the 50-week, it would all converge around that 102K. That's my worst case scenario. Not saying that is going to happen. Anyways, let's get into Ethereum. And a couple things here. We have a fib that we're looking at, a Fibonacci retracement. For those of you who don't know, it's the golden ratio indicator, basically. So we have our fib drawn here. And as you can see, Ethereum, it was having a hard time with this 888 level at around 4K. And it's broken through that and is testing its former all-time highs. It also had these series of higher lows, broke underneath that, got all the way down to its 100-month moving average, tagged it perfectly, and that so far has signaled the bottom. Got a monthly buy signal, and Ethereum is just ripping up and doing very well, going back over to the weekly. So I'll get over to this, or get rid of this trend line, because Ethereum's invalidated that. And if we go zoom in even on the daily and take a look right where this price topped out, is right at around 47.90, close to that. So pretty close to wherever the all-time highs were. It might get another bounce around this 888, and the 20-week moving average is there at around 4K. Just minor time frame technical analysis. If September does suck, maybe we see Ethereum come and test this 786, 100-week or 100-day moving average is coming up there at around 3,400. We even have the 50-week curling up. So I'd say the 786 looks like it could be some strong support. Let's take another or a look at a couple other indicators as well. We'll take these off so we can see it more clearly. A couple indicators that go really well together. I recommend you all have these: stochastic RSI and our MACD, the moving average convergence divergence. So as we can see here on the weekly, I mean, that's very positive, and we can stay positive even if the stochastic comes down a little bit or the MACD comes down a little bit. Price action can still remain positive, and sometimes, we can curl down and just sort of reset. So right now things are good, and even on the monthly time frame, I mean, to me this looks very good. The monthly time frame, the MACD just turned bullish, and the stochastic is going up, and you can see last time when the monthly just flipped up, there was another bit of ways to go. So that monthly MACD flipped up. That was December of 23. Let's go to the weekly and take a look at that. December of 23, we'll measure out how much that positive MACD move was. We'll go right here at around the 0.5 prices right there. So that move, it went up another 9,500%. So on the weekly, it is showing us that maybe we'll see some pullback. But if we had a similar MACD move and we saw another 100%, 95% from here, that would be around 9K Ethereum. It sounds crazy. Again, we have Ethereum at around a $500 billion market cap, half a trillion, as I mentioned in the first part of this video. So if all of a sudden Ethereum is doing a 2x, that means it's going to be worth around a trillion. Something else to keep in mind is that Ethereum, when we look at our Fibonacci price targets, take it off log scale, that 8,000 or 9,000 number, wherever it was, it's kind of close to that 2618. That 2618 I've been talking about a lot as a target, because if Bitcoin tops at 150K, it's going to have a market cap of around 3 trillion. And if Ethereum Bitcoin, let's go over to that quick. If Ethereum Bitcoin gets up somewhere around 0.4 to 0.5, that would mean it would have 40% of the market cap of Bitcoin and be worth around 1.2 trillion. 1.2 trillion would be around that Ethereum 11K number. Right now, ETH Bitcoin's at 0.22. That means the market cap is 22% of what Bitcoin is. So let's show you this real quick. If you divide half a trillion into 2.3 trillion, this is about 22% of that. Just so you know, that's what this chart and those numbers mean. So Ethereum, Bitcoin, when we've had alt season, it has been when ETH has started to do really well against Bitcoin. Remember what I said in the first part of this video, that can happen quick. Alt season ended right around here, even though ETH Bitcoin topped further. Again, around 0.6, 0.5 to 0.6. Last cycle, alt season ended at around May 10th when Ethereum was at 0.4. Again, if Bitcoin's at 155K and we get to 0.4, 40% of that 155K, Bitcoin would be at a 3 trillion market cap at 155K. 40% of that would be 1.2 trillion. 1.2 trillion ETH. This is around that 11K area. So that's where alt season ended here. And right now, I mean, that's just double from where we are now. So if ETH tops out at this 0.4 and it is worth around, let's say, 9,000, 10,000, wherever it is on the chart, that could be a good indicator that we're having alt season. And just to prove my point further, if we add on the Bitcoin chart here, you guys can see that when Bitcoin tops, this is where alt season was. Ethereum, Bitcoin was moving after. Again, this is that rotation I talk about. The 2 to 3 weeks after Bitcoin tops is when altcoins explode, when we have this rotation. So just keep that in mind. Screenshot this, save this, because it's very important to remember. So from this top, when Bitcoin, I think it was around 65K, Ethereum dang near doubles. And you can see that in the ETH Bitcoin pairing. Even more so down here, look at the ETH Bitcoin pairing, where Bitcoin topped, Ethereum Bitcoin, massive rotation after. So right now, Ethereum's becoming worth more against its pairing with Bitcoin. And so if we start to see Bitcoin sort of consolidate and ETH Bitcoin come up here, it could be a good signal that Bitcoin may be topping. And going back over to Ethereum, just to drive this point further, we'll take a look at ETH price. And we'll go over to 2017, where we can see what it does even more so. Actually, let's go over to the daily so we get this as accurate as possible. Sorry, I hope none of you have epilepsy or anything so we can take a solid look at this. You can see where Bitcoin was topping in 2017 right here, and Ethereum was worth around, let's just say 700, and it topped at around 1400. So from the Bitcoin top, Ethereum does a 2x there in 2017. What happened in 2021? Important to take a look at from this Bitcoin top. And I know Bitcoin had an even higher top later. We had alt season earlier. So just hang with me and, take a look at what I'm trying to show you here. ETH was around 2,200. It eventually topped at around 4,400. Again, a 2x. Now, you're not going to sell the exact top. Maybe, you don't double your money, but you get like 80% higher or more. That's fine too. But the point still stands. That's the rotation we're looking at here. Let me get a sip of coffee. So that's the rotation we're looking at. That's why Ethereum is so important to look at. We are in phase 2, and that is why it's important to take a look at Ethereum. Now, I don't believe Bitcoin is topped. Hopefully. Knock on wood. I hope you could hear that. I don't believe Bitcoin is topped yet, and I'm still looking at price for Bitcoin. At minimum 155K. I've seen some people talk about 138K. Sure, why not? But at minimum 155K. I believe Bitcoin could top around 200K actually. But, we'll see. We have to pay attention to what the charts are showing us. And right now, ETH very close to breaking through. Let's take a look at Ethereum just under a couple other indicators. We took a look at Ethereum, Bitcoin. Let's just take a look at let's do the Bollinger Bands. Let's do the Hull Suite indicator. I think these are a couple important indicators. So right now it is pushing up the Bollinger Band. And whenever we hit the top of the Bollinger Band, we can get rejected from it, or we can push it higher. Right now, ETH pushing higher. We saw on the MACD, the monthly is very positive from the Hull Suite indicator, which kind of shows where the MACD would be on the weekly time frame. Should the MACD all of a sudden flip negative, the Hull Suite indicator is all the way down there at around 2,700. Now it's going to be moving up as we continue further, but just keep that in the back of your mind, is that when the MACD flips negative, that tends to be where this Hull Suite indicator is. We're not anywhere near that, but I do think it's important to take a look at. All right, another chart that you should be watching is Ethereum dominance. Now, let's zoom out a little bit here. I'll admit I don't look at this one all the time, but something you see here, kind of like Ethereum Bitcoin, very similar actually, is that we have these lower highs here. We have that spike here. Now, taking a look at 2017, where did we get alt season? We got it in January 8th. So I'm going to draw a trend line from that top, because that's where Ethereum topped out against Bitcoin. And I think, those tops line up pretty well over there. We may have a wick or so above it, but I believe this lines up pretty well. We have that earlier wick, but this is close enough. So we could see where was alt season 21 right here in May. Now it did top out further. Again, Bitcoin had that double top in 21, but here is where we had alt season, okay? When Ethereum starts going sideways, even though it's valued high against Bitcoin, that's your alts, many of them are already crashing at least 50%. So as soon as Ethereum dominance gets to this, 20%, hell, even 15% area, I think, alarm bells got to start going off. Let's say 16. But if it starts getting up there close to 20, you got to be taking a look at your alts. And if they've ran 10x, it may be important, or even 5x to take some profits. Now, let's take a look at this from our last cycle underneath our Fibonacci retracement. You can see it still has those non-log price targets. So let's put it back on log. And It could, let's add in our moving averages too, because sometimes these do a good job of showing things. So right here, you can see a little bit, it's honoring the moving averages a bit, stuck right at the 100-week moving average, but get into that golden pocket area, and that's the 200-week. The 200-week moving average on a lot of assets, stocks, cryptos, whatever, tends to be a good area of support and resistance. And it's right at that golden pocket, the 618 to the 65. So I'm expecting, maybe we get a little bit of resistance there from Ethereum dominance, because this thing's just been going straight up. Ethereum dominance. It's right now, this says, by the way, sorry I didn't explain it before, 13.37% of all money in crypto is in Ethereum. That's what that means, okay? And when Ethereum dominance is going up, that tends to mean that our altcoins, if you get in the right ones, will do well pretty soon in the upcoming future. So just, keep an eye on your altcoins, and a lot of altcoins still at pretty decent prices. Sorry for sipping the coffee right in your ear. Try not to make this an ASMR channel. I hate that stuff. Anyways, I think Ethereum dominance might encounter some resistance, if not here, maybe at the golden pocket and the 200. Again, where alt season happened the last couple times, or where it ended, was January 8th. It was all the way up here, and many of the coins even top before that. So Ethereum dominance was at around 18%, 19%. Alt season ended May 10th, and it got as high as 20%. But the candle body's down here at around 19. So, even I'd say a week before that, we could take a look at this. Let's just say 17 to 19%. So already there's some similarities here. We have around 18% being the average between those. So can we hit 18% again? That's right where the 786 fib is. There are people out there, increasing numbers of people I see on X, on YouTube, talking about an early cycle top. And this would be showing us at this current trend that might be possible. Now, if we get an early cycle top, Bitcoin probably is not going to get to 200K. It's going to be somewhere around that 130 to 155K area. And Ethereum isn't going to get to 11K. It'll be around that 7 to 9K area. So, I hope that we don't get an early top, and one of the biggest reasons why is these assets can then go higher. If we get an early top, we're not going to see as high a prices, so just keep that in the back of your mind. But if we're getting to this 18% area, that is something to watch out for. So on my chart, I'm actually going to take a horizontal line here. I'm just going to draw it right at around this 18% area, and I'm actually going to turn it red, sort of like red alert. Maybe consider getting out at this price. And, after drawing it, you can see how we have a lot of wicks here. Sometimes you see, where these areas converge here. So 786, we have that trend line. It would be breaking above the 200-week moving average, which would be very bullish. So that is definitely something to watch out for. Now, one thing we haven't gotten quite yet is Bitcoin dominance crashing. I am going to go over to Bitcoin dominance, even though it's an Ethereum video. We've had Bitcoin dominance crash. And, again, this means 60% of all money in crypto is in Bitcoin. And when it crashes, it's gone down to like the low mid 40%. We haven't quite seen that yet. Now, it has broken under the 50-week moving average, which is bearish for Bitcoin dominance, sorry, mouthful, but bullish for our altcoins. But we really need to see this dropping way further. And in the past, we've sort of had these double tops, even here from the summer to the winter in 2017, we had that double top. I was taking a look in one of my last videos how on the stochastic for the monthly, we get a double bottom as well. There's some bearish divergence there, but double bottom in the stochastic, and it bottomed. Bitcoin dominance bottom. We had that alt season here with the second bottom, and we haven't even done it once. So are we just, in my opinion, this is just me sort of theorizing here or making a hypothesis, is that if we do get this first drop, that we might be getting a massive fake out. Now, some people might say if we get this massive drop and let's say Bitcoin dominance gets to the low mid 50%, some people, I know people will be saying, you know what, that was alt season, that's it. And we're not going to get the alt seasons that we did in the past. And you know what, they could be right. But I'm getting the feeling, kind of like last cycle, that that could be a massive fake out move before the real drop. Now, how long that would take, maybe it goes into early mid part of next year. You never know. I try not to make predictions. I try to let the data lead the way. But I do wonder if we are going to get sort of a double bottom and get a fake out, if you will. Now, Ethereum, it's doing very well. And the way it's pumping, you got to consider what that data is showing us, that Ethereum, when it has pumped up to these levels, that has been the top. Now, February of 24, that wasn't the top. We are definitely going further. So we might get a double top in these RSIs. Let's get rid of the stochastic one. I don't know why it doesn't go back any further. Let's run this through a couple other indicators here. Here's the ultimate RSI, which has been very good at calling the top. And this is, let me show you that. Here we go. Lux Algo Ultimate RSI. Love this indicator. So anyways, this one's been pretty decent at calling the tops when this gets all the way up here. So this can be an indicator you watch. And that's why I try to share everything on my video, so you guys can use this too, and you can tell me whether or not you agree, disagree, or take a look at things differently. Want this to be a conversation, not me being the expert, but me showing you what I see, trying to use my psychology perspective to sort of challenge some of the narratives out there, or even some of that's my cat's automatic feeder. Sorry about that. That's my recorded voice too. Kind of cringe, I know. But sort of challenge, some of the, the reason I talk about fear and greed is to show us that, if we're feeling pretty euphoric and the price is kind of topping out, that, maybe we want to be bearish, not bullish. But anyways, kind of off my tangent there for a second. We still have a bit of room to run here for the ultimate RSI. So again, I think Ethereum 11K, I'm going to stick by that stance. Ethereum dominance is sort of showing us that, we are well in the phase two. Ethereum Bitcoin as well. Let's go back to that. That this thing has started to rip. Now, is it going to rip like 2017? Or are we going to get some chop? Now, let's go over to the weekly. And you know what? Let's throw this back on there. Why not? Sometimes, maybe it'll show us something. So, here where it tops out the ultimate RSI, went all the way up. It is going up the first time. But you see, last cycle, was staying up there. So, yeah, just trying to take a look through some new perspectives. But Ethereum, Bitcoin. Last week we talked about this, that breaking above the 50 and the 3-2, very bullish. We have now turned confirmed bullish with Ethereum's pairing against Bitcoin. That's why we are in phase two, as I said. How long or short it's going to be to get to phase three and phase four, who knows? But do watch for some areas of resistance. Last cycle, you can see that 0.5, a little bit of resistance. Now it broke bearish for a little bit to December 2020, and then it turned on the afterjets in January down to March, and then right here was alt season. So are we going to get a little bit of a choppy move like that, where we hit the 0.5, come down, maybe even further, but and then go up again, somewhere around the 200, come back down, and then there's alt season. It maybe, it's not no one's ever accused me of being a good artist, but if we get something similar like that, that's what we would be looking for. Not that it has to play out that way, but markets do tend to sort of chop like that. And I think, if I draw that again, I'd probably even squeeze this in tighter, and then by the time that plays out, that would fall in line, give or take, a month or two. That would fall in line with our 4-year cycle, that maybe Bitcoin's going to top in December, January, and then we get that 3-week rotation. I'm still in the mindset that we're in a 4-year cycle until proven otherwise. The data is showing us to be cautious, but just something to be aware of. Anyways, guys, let me know what you think in the comments below. Just wanted to sort of chew on all the moves in Ethereum. You know, I've shared recently that we are in phase two and that Ethereum Bitcoin is bullish. And I wanted to show you more of that data and what that all means and just kind of take a macroscopic look or a bird's eye view of all the things going on and just sort of chew on all the data. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Anything you notice that maybe I didn't talk about. Again, I want this to be a conversation, because I'm not going to be able to call alt season perfectly. I'm not going to claim that I can. But I think, we could put our brains together and sort of come up with some good ideas from this. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Have a wonderful, what day is it? Tuesday. Take care.